Hi everyone, Anthony Fitzgerald here, Regional Vice President for MaVie, and welcome to the DNA Report training webinar. With the first round of DNA reports now being delivered around the world, we appreciate that you have some questions or may require a little clarification on various aspects of the report, and we wanted to be able to address that for you immediately. So to do that, on the call today, we have our Chief Scientific Officers, Fortini Natluka and Chrysanthi Kuri. Fortini and Chris, along with other members of our Scientific Advisory Board, amongst many things, are responsible for the content management of the DNA reports, the DNA generation process, coordinating and monitoring the outsourcing laboratories and the data control. They are extremely knowledgeable about the entire DNA offering, and we are privileged to have them join us on the webinar today. So over to you, Fortini.
Thank you very much, Anthony, for having me today in this call. I'm very glad to join today, and I'm very excited and on behalf of the scientific team to at last having this launch, and everybody got their reports, and I hope they are satisfied with our services. So today, my part of talking will be to try give you a brief introduction into a little bit of science behind this DNA tests and reports that you have all been received so far. So let's talk at the beginning a little bit about DNA. It's commonly said that it's our genetic blueprint, and we as geneticists like many times to call it as our book of life. This means that it defines us to a great extent of who we are. It determines our human traits and our human characteristics, even our physical traits, and into the deeper part like cells differentiation and development. It assures proper body function, and also it defines heredity, meaning that it defines what information that we have in our DNA we pass to our children. Of course, we get from our parents and so on. So something very interesting about the DNA is that we are all the same but still different. It's very exciting for people to learn that 99.9% of our DNA is the same among all people all around the world, but only the remaining 0.1% is what makes us unique. And this, I know, may sound a little bit too small as a percentage, but you can think of a DNA being a very large book with billions of letters, and each create what we call the genes. The genes are small segments in this book of life that give meaning to all the functions that I mentioned before, every function that defines who we are. Very interesting in this 0.1% is this change in letters that we as geneticists now can observe and read in the DNA, and it's that what makes us different between each other. So these differences in the DNA, which are called polymorphism, which in Greek means many forms, can be either pathogenic. Fortunately, this is very rare, but when they exist, they are causal for disease. And this is the field that we call diagnostic genetics. Many of the DNA variations, we call them silent. It's like they are muted, they have not known effect, and I intentionally use not known effect because they actually may have an effect, but it has not been yet discovered. Also, some of the DNA variations are associated with specific conditions, medical disease. This is not a diagnostic genetics field because it's only association, meaning that when you have this DNA variation, you may be more vulnerable to specific disease. However, in this project, we are focusing on the big field of DNA variation that is associated with wellness traits. So first thing to note and clear that we don't do any medical things. So wellness means everything that has to do with our physical appearance, our personality, our sports performance, and nutrients metabolism, and many other aspects of what we call wellness. So the general field in genetics that involves the investigation of such DNA variations by reading these variations, these changes in the letters of DNA, is called predictive genomics. It aims to detect such differences, and two main characteristics of these differences is that they are polygenic, meaning that usually more or equal to one DNA variations are involved in order to develop a specific trait or a specific biological condition. And also they are multifactorial. As I said before, we always use the term associated, meaning that having a DNA variation or specific DNA variation does not mean that with certainty you're going to develop a specific trait. It just gives you a predisposition. What comes here to play an important role is the environmental triggers. In genetics, what we call environment is whatever surrounds us. It can be either even the air, whether it's polluted or not. It can be your diet. It can be your habits. It can be even your psychological status, how stressed you are, and many, many other things. So here is a basic schema of what I just described. Genetic background together with environment gives the actual phenotype. Phenotype in genetics means what it's actually seen. And phenotype, it's not only what you can see when you look yourself at the mirror, it's also what scientists can see in the micro environment, like your cells and your systems and your tissues. So it's like genetics loads the gun, but environment comes to pull the trigger in order to actually have a predisposition to a specific trait or biological function. Now, for predictive genomics, why are they beneficial for people and consumers is that because their purpose and of course our vision is to lead to optimal customized services in order not to deal with masses of people all together and give general guidelines, general plans, general products, but customize them based on their needs. Identifying the genetic background together with environmental factors and consequently recommend the appropriate corrective action. So one of our, and we're very proud of that, one of our basic advantage in MaVie offering these predictive genomic services and products is that our customizing logics are both based on the DNA reports assessments that you actually received and all the questionnaires that you have already filled in order for us to identify the environmental factors for which I talked before that also play an important role for us to identify and assess your needs. So here is another schema that is showing you in more simple a way what I just described. Genetic background together with environmental factors act together on the cellular level to develop a trait or a specific biological function. And then we go and assess your needs and recommend your corrective action. It can be a training plan, it can be a nutritional plan, it can be a product which will act on the cellular level to try to boost your function that may give you a predisposition not to work so good, or enhance something that you are benefited with. So now I will pass over to Chris, to my colleague Chris, to talk you more about the specific DNA reports assessments that we offer and take you through a nice tour in an online account. Chris, you're welcome to talk.
Thank you very much for me. Thank you, Anthony, for the introduction. Hi, everyone. I think that some of you have already met during Singapore event. So my name is Chrysanthi, but it's easier to know me as Chris, as my colleagues call me. So today I'm gonna take you through a tour to your vOffice account in order to make to you clear how you can read your DNA report and I'm sure that you already did, but just to give you a more good view about that. So after you logged in your account at the office, probably you have seen that there is a tab here about DNA report. So just to mention before that this is a demo account, this is not a real account. That's why it includes all the DNA reports, and that's the reason I use this today to help you have an overview of the website and the vOffice account. So here is the tab of the DNA report, as I said, and you can see the 5 categories of the DNA report that we offer. So let's start with beauty DNA report, which many of you have ordered. So there is a brief description for each DNA report in the first page of the site. So beauty DNA report, as you can see, contains personal results of the detection of DNA variants associated with skin and hair physical characteristics, and of course, health and early signs of aging. These results will allow you to discover your genetic weaknesses and help you overcome these by customized advice that we offer. This is important because understanding your potential genetic predisposition could be a precious guiding tool for the appropriate personalized regime addressing your specific needs. So, after the brief description of each DNA report, you can click check results now, and you can see a brief description of what are the traits that are examined in this report in the expanding list. So on the left side is the name of category, the biological process, for example, skin elasticity and firmness, which is the ability of your body to produce enough collagen, the main protein to keep your skin in a good condition, or skin antioxidation, which include genes associated with defense of our skin against harmful bioproducts and environmental toxins. Another important biological function related to skin health is the ability of our skins to renew the skin cells of our body, as well as genes that are related to protection of our skin from sunlight exposure. Last but not least, we also include the analysis of genetic variants for hair characteristics like androgenetic alopecia and etc. So on the right side, there is a small bar graph showing the potential genetic predisposition for this specific trait, for example, for skin elasticity or skin irritability, as it was assessed by our scientific team. Now, by clicking on a specific trait, for example here, you can redirect it to a page that includes more details and description about the trait in simple words that everyone can understand. For example, for skin antioxidation, we have a brief description of what it is about. So let's have a talk about that. During normal cells function, several bioproducts called free radicals are created, and our bodies have mechanisms to remove or deactivate them. However, factors like unhealthy dietary habits, smoking, stress, pollution can cause serious damage to our cells. But apart from external lifestyle and environmental factors, our sensitivity to oxidative stress is due to our genetic makeup. That's why DNA results is important to address this potential weakness. So by clicking DNA results, we provide the overall conclusion here for this specific trait for skin antioxidation. And this is the most important because it indicates how we assess each individual for this specific trait, for this specific category. So we have a general conclusion description here in the bar graph that, as you previously seen, displaying all the small bar graphs together to give you a sense whether you have a potentially bad negative effect or a potential positive good effect for this trait. In this case, the overall profile based on the DNA result shows that there is not a specific DNA variation detected to be associated with disruptions of antioxidation ability and your ability to defend against harmful bioproducts of your body. So below is the list of DNA variations that we examined and found in DNA, whether you carry or not this particular trait, antioxidation, skin antioxidation. So here in the first column is the name of the gene. Next is the letter of the DNA sequence, which may be different from one person to another. And in the last column, there is the potential effect of the gene in this trait. So just to have an overview about the colors and the markers that we display here. So you can see that, for example, in overall conclusion, there is green marker. Green marker in all DNA reports indicate a potential positive effect, a beneficial action. The light green marker here, like that, indicates an average level of function, like a neutral function for the specific trait. And of course, the red marker here indicates a potential, I have noted potential, just not to be scared about that. It's a potential negative effect of this DNA variation related to this trait. And of course, a minus and plus symbols indicates that too. So this overall conclusion is developed in our system by algorithms that calculates the score of each potential effect of each list of these DNA variations and associate them with negative or positive effect potentially. So depends on your DNA results. After that, after you see your potential effect for each of these variants, you can click on tab of advice. And our scientific team have written a general text of advice for people to know what they can do in order to overcome their potential genetic weakness or enhance their genetic strengths. For this example, as we've seen, the conclusion is positive, so does not indicate need for specific advice for the antioxidation ability of clients' needs. So we have a positive overall conclusion and only a general recommendation to try to follow a daily skin cleaning routine, keep your skin moisturized throughout the day, and follow a healthy and balanced diet. So that was an example from Beauty DNA report. And let's have another look to the next report, which is Fitness DNA report. And I'm sure that many of you have already a look. So as you can imagine, let's talk about a little bit about what Fitness DNA report includes. This DNA report includes analysis of genetic variants associated with several aspects of physical condition and fitness to help you discover your potential genetic advantages or barriers related to sports performance, and to help you make appropriate choice of sport, improve your performance and your general physical condition by adjusting your training program to your personal needs. Again, by clicking check results now, you can see the expanding list of traits examined in Fitness DNA report, like muscle performance, including genes regulate anaerobic muscle function, affecting speed and muscle strength, or muscle performance and body mass index traits, and even psychological aptitude and genes related to personal motivation towards physical exercise. So let's have a look in an example. If you again click on a specific trait like endurance capacity, you can see a brief description of what it is about. So endurance capacity is the performance of an individual during exercise that depends on aerobic an oxygenated process where several different muscle groups take part. It is an important factor for physical fitness, either we are looking for a professional athlete or a recreational athlete. Then by clicking DNA results, as we saw before, you can see the overall conclusion, the bar with the overall category effect, and of course the genes that we investigated in these traits, the DNA variation, the letter of sequence of the DNA for these specific genes, and of course the bar graphs with the potential effect for this trait. Red marker again indicates a negative effect, light green marker indicates a neutral effect, and green marker indicates a positive effect. And all of these effects are potential. It doesn't mean that you are diagnosed with something like that. It gives you the potential effect of your DNA. So as we see here, again, the overall conclusion is positive. So these DNA results are not likely to be associated with increased endurance capacity. So this is a good effect to have increased endurance capacity during sports performance. And if you click on advice, as you have already increased endurance capacity, you don't need any specific advice for specific training. And that's why there is no more recommendation for this trait here. But later I will show you cases when you have a negative overall conclusion about the trait, what will happen and how the advice will be. Let's continue to the next report, which is more challenging for us as scientists, but it's a really interesting DNA report if you want to know about your personality and psychology, for example. So next report is personality and inborn talents DNA report. And as you can imagine, this report aims to detect genetic variants associated with psychological and behavioral traits and abilities like inborn talent in order to gain a better understanding of your personality and behavior, and to know, for example, if you are aggressive, that your DNA is a little bit responsible for that. So by clicking again the results, you can see the expanding list of the traits that we examine for this DNA report, and of course the bar graphs which show the potential overall conclusion for this. So in this DNA report, we examine traits, personality traits like impulsiveness, social stress response, hyperactivity, and also inborn talents like working memory performance, or educational attainment, or verbal creativity. And of course, as our behavior and psychology are connected with addictions, we are investigated impact of individuals' behavior to specific substances, to addictions to some substance like alcohol, caffeine, or smoking. So by clicking on a specific trait, for example, vulnerability to addictions like caffeine, you can see a small description for this trait. And if you don't know, caffeine is a chemical substance acting in the brain to produce stimulating effects, which range from pleasurable ones like increased mood and energy to undesirable, like anxiety or elevated heart rate, and etc. So people usually adjust their habit of drinking caffeine beverages according to their tolerance. However, caffeine may have different impact to individuals' behavior towards it. And that's the reason that genetic background have a really big impact to addiction to some to substances like that. So by clicking DNA results, you can see the list of genes that are investigated in this trait, for example, vulnerability to caffeine, and you can see the overall conclusion. Now is the case that we have a negative overall conclusion, a potential negative conclusion, which indicates that this overall profile is likely to be associated with higher consumption of caffeine, and individuals may be more vulnerable to develop a type of addiction to caffeine. Now that the overall conclusion is negative, if you click on the tab of advice, you can see a big text with advice and explanation how to overcome this weakness. For example, by replacing coffee with green tea, or drink lots of water, or sleep more, and of course eat high energy of food if you try to drink less caffeine than you did before. So let's continue to our last, I think, DNA report, which is a big one, DNA report with a lot of genetic variants investigated. So it's healthy diet and weight management DNA report. And of course, as you can understand, this report aims to detect DNA variants associated with body weight regulation or weight gain, and of course, nutrients metabolism, in order to identify individuals' potential genetic weakness to achieve loss of excessive pounds, or to maintain an optimum body weight, or regulate nutrients metabolism. Again, by clicking check results now, you can see the expanding list of the traits that we investigate in this DNA report, like lipolysis ability, which examine genes related to how efficiently our body breaks down the fat and produce energy, or genes involved in feeding behavior and how our genes regulate our appetite, and of course genes which are involved in metabolism of major nutrients and substances found in food, like vitamins or calcium, iron, etc. And also tolerance in lactose and gluten, that many people have a deficiency in that. So by clicking a specific trait, for example, let's take this trait here about lipid metabolism, we can see a small description and small detailed description about this trait and what is lipid metabolism about. So our ability to try to weight loss or maintain a healthy weight depend on how efficiently our body breaks down the fat to produce energy, a process called lipolysis. And unfortunately, some people, as you have understood, do not have the same level of lipolytic action due to their genetic makeup. And may they need extra caution with their diet and lifestyle to avoid negative effects of lipid accumulation, like obesity and etc. So if you check these results for this trait for lipid metabolism, you can see that the overall conclusion here is negative. Again, there are the genes, the name of the genes that we investigate, the DNA variation, and the potential effect for these specific genes. The overall conclusion here indicate potential disruptions of lipolysis, of the ability to break down the lipids stored in fat cells of our body. As a result, increased fat accumulation may be observed, and the body mass index may be adversely affected. So if you click on the tab of the advice, you can see that if you have a negative conclusion for genetic predisposition of low function of lipolysis process, it's recommended by our expertise to implement your lifestyle and your diet to overcome this weakness by limiting, of course, the amount of fat, include more exercise, limit the alcohol and carbs maybe, and other really detailed recommendations for you. Okay, something important that I want to tell you here, in order not to be confused with the overall conclusion, is that not all DNA variations, not all these genes have the same effect when we calculate the overall conclusion. So let's have an example. Sometimes you may have a list of 10 DNA variants, like here, for example, and 7 from 10 have a positive potential effect. So you may think that your overall conclusion is positive. but this is not the case always, because you may have a negative conclusion if the 3 remaining DNA variants have a bigger negative effect and are more important for the biological process that we investigate, and we have weighted them more to scoring system, and that's why we end up with a potential negative conclusion. So it doesn't mean that if you have more positive here than negatives, that the overall conclusion will be positive, because some genetic variations have a bigger impact to your overall conclusion. So that's what I would like to tell you about our report, and just small tips about what else you can find in the vOffice account is that you can check the references here of every gene that we investigated in each DNA report, and the general function, for example, of genes, and of course the scientific evidence about these genes and how we implement this in our DNA report to assess your DNA results. So in each report there is a tab of references like this one. And of course, you can print your DNA report if you want in a printed form as a PDF by clicking here, print your report. I hope it will not start now. Okay, so now I will take you through a quick tour about our plans and projects, because I think that many of you have order healthy diet and weight management report or sports performance DNA report. So by clicking here, plans and products, you can see 4 tabs, which include training plans, dietary plans, and customized products that we are going to launch soon. So first, training plan. If you tab here, you can see 2 training plans to choose from, because you asked to choose a combo between aerobic and strength training tailored to your specific needs after your analysis of your DNA results. For example, you may have chosen jogging training for aerobic training, and you can see a detailed 8-week plan with exercise 3 days per week, with all the details for time sets, rest intervals, intensity, and etc., etc. Also, if you want more details about how to read or how to work with this jogging training, you can click here and learn more about jogging, controlling intensity of training, and how to read your weekly plan. Then the second option of training plan is the strength training plan that you have chosen. For example, in this demo account, elastic band training is the option. And again, there are there's a lot of detail about exercises that you can do 3 days per week again, and you can also watch a video if you want to how to do the exercise correctly, like that. Last but not least are, of course, our dietary plans, and you can see 3 tabs by clicking in first dietary plan here. The first tab is dietary plan, which includes a small description about your profile and analysis of your DNA results and your lifestyle questionnaire, like details about your body mass index and daily energy you need, and type of diet that you have chosen, for example, ovo-lacto vegetarian here. By clicking below, there is a brief profile description. Below the profile description, there are categories of food that you are supposed to eat, and there are portion sizes equivalent which you are supposed to eat during your dietary plan. And you can click also to details to see encyclopedic information about this type of food. The second tab concerns the micronutrients and macronutrients nutritional goals that you may have, tailored to your needs to achieve your goals for a healthy diet or weight loss. So you can see the amount that you need during the day and during your 8-week meal plan. The last and the most important is, of course, your weekly meal plan. Again, it's for 8 weeks, and it has a lot, many alternatives to choose from. For example, breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snack. And all of these have recipes and also a grocery list that you can see to order to make it possible to work for you. So if you click here, you can see also the calories, the carbs intake, the fat and protein that you gain from this type of food. So again, there is a tab here, how to read your dietary plan, that you can explore and see more details. And of course, don't forget that in our site, we make clear also with a form how to read your DNA report, which you can learn more and see many things that I told you today about how to read your DNA report. Let me show you. Sorry for the delay. Okay, yeah, right. So this is a document to help you read your DNA report. Again, it's about DNA results, advice tab, and etc. and bar graphs explanation to make this clear to you what they are telling about your results. Also, the last thing that I would like to say to you is that we offer, of course, to you FAQs and support to your inquiries, which I know that you may have, because it's difficult to know all these days about genes and biology field. So these are the commonly asked FAQs, and of course we have a glossary with terms of different biology definitions that you may find in your DNA reports. So that was our through your DNA report, and I hope it was clear and have a better view now of how to read them. Fodini and me are here to answer, and the rest of the team, of course. I'm here to answer scientific questions that you may have. And I hope you are all glad with your DNA report because we are really with your results. So thank you very much for your time, and we are all here for your questions.
Thank you, Fotini and Chris, for the overview there. Now, lots of information for everyone to absorb. So what we'll do, we'll ensure that the training is available in your back office so you can reference it as many times as you need to draw out that information or reflect on any certain points that both Fotini and Chris touched on. What I'd like to do now is to introduce our COO, Daniel O'Day, who will facilitate the Q&A session. Hi, Daniel. Welcome to the training.
Thank you, Anthony. Okay, so we have many questions. I'll address the question and to the people that can answer. Let's say the first one for you, Fotini. Okay, I have a live question here. The DNA test from mother and son comparison can show in some overall category that one person will have more genes listed than another. Why do some genes not show up on one test compared to another, even in the family members?
Thank you very much, Daniel, for the question. Okay, let me explain a little bit about that, because it may happen also. I understand the nature of the question, how is it possible to happen in family members, but it may also happen between other members, other clients that have the same reports. So it is possible, as you can all read also in our FAQ that is posted in our website, that some of the variants and genes tested during the lab protocol design may fail for some cases of samples. When you provide your sample and we process it in the lab, it may happen that some of the variants, some of the letters in the DNA cannot be read. this may happen for various reasons. Most likely, it's because of the nature of the sample. It doesn't mean you did something harm. It's actually based on your DNA by itself, that it was not able to be read based on the test assay that we have. However, we do have a quality threshold in order to determine whether the whole sample can be considered failed, or particular variants are missing, let's say, have failed, have not been able to produce a good result in the lab. For these cases, that, like the one that our dear member describes, that even a mother and son may have not the same listed variant below a category, it's because the number of variants that failed were not such big to get above the threshold that we set as quality control. So we were able to release the report, even having these failures in the variants. And we actually also implement in our system an algorithm that calculates and takes into account these failures in order to produce an overall assessment, the overall conclusion that you see in this category, and be a valid one. So when the number of variants that have failed are not matched, let's say very simply, I will say to you, then this algorithm comes in and treats the sample a little bit different than the others, and is able to provide with a valid conclusion in the category. I hope my answer was comprehensive enough.
Yes, very good. Thank you, Fatini. I have another question here that was sent to our email address, dnation@mavie.net. This is the email address where you can send your question when you have some. Some people say that they cannot access, they don't have the report ready yet. And the reason of that is that you have to fill the report, the questionnaire, before we can give you your report. And Fatini, can you explain why we need to get that questionnaire before we can deliver the report?
Yes, of course, Daniel. This again has to do with the algorithms. Everything in the system has to do with the algorithms, the way it's built in order to, because our ultimate purpose is customization. So we don't just focus on the problem, let's say, or on your DNA report assessment. We want to provide you with customized services. And in order to do that, we definitely need in our system to know your answers, so we can define what I talked before, the environmental triggers. So in order for us to be able to give you the assessments and your services, your customized plans and everything, we need these answers to be taken into account.
Very good. Thank you, Fatini. I know there's more or less a dozen of our customers didn't fill their customers yet. So if you didn't fill your questionnaire, please go on the portal to fill your questionnaire. My next question is, does the DNA measure metabolism?
Oh, yeah, the DNA, first, let's clear something. The DNA test that we are doing has nothing to do with actual measurements, real measurements, real percentages even. What we do is we read letters, very simply. And these letters are associated, these variations, with a trait. This kind of DNA test is not quantitative, I could say. It's rather qualitative, meaning that it's measuring the quality of the trait, whether it has a potential association with a negative effect or a positive effect. So when we're talking about metabolism now, this is a very, very extended aspect in biology, which consists of hundreds of biological functions related to metabolism. So when you're looking at your healthy diet and weight management, all the categories that are involved there have to do with metabolism. In terms of a more micro environment, we're talking about feeding behavior, appetite regulation, body composition, fat versus muscle mass. And when we're talking about cellular level, we're talking about nutrigenomics. So this is also about metabolism, where we actually assess your profile based on how your genetic background may be associated with specific substances or vitamins that are into your food intake. So on one hand, the answer is no, we cannot measure. DNA does not measure. It's nothing to do with when you go and do a blood test and you measure, for example, your vitamin D levels. But on the other hand, we examine on the metabolic level your genetic background for your vitamin D metabolism.
Thank you. My next question here, can we change our answers to the questionnaire after it's submitted?
No, the questionnaires for now cannot be changed. I understand the nature of the question. Of course, this is a service that it keeps actually developing even at the time we're talking. We are very, very excited to launch every new phase, new stuff in the service and new products. One of which will be definitely to actually being able to update your statements in your questionnaire and potentially provide you with updated, let's say, services. But for now, no, there is no ability to do that.
Thank you. And your answer applied to the next question. I see a question here that someone received the exercise training plan for gym in free weight exercise. And that question is, can I change now my plan? And this is something, what your answer applied to that question as well, is that we're working on that. We will introduce new features in the near future, in the following few months, and we will offer the option to change your plan. My next question is, are the genes they are tested for each section of the same in all? As mine is different from the example. Someone, when you were talking, Chris, someone typed that question on the chat saying that, are the gene they test for each section the same in all, as mine is different from the example? Can you answer that, Chris?
Yeah, of course. In each DNA report, we examine different genetic variations. For example, beauty DNA report have different genetic variants from sports performance DNA reports, because we address different biological functions. For example, we address skin elasticity in beauty DNA report, whereas in sports performance, we address endurance capacity. The genes that we investigate for all the clients, for example, both the DNA report for beauty, we examine the same genetic variations, but like Fotini said before, it may happen to some samples to have failed some of their DNA variants. So that's why some people see less DNA variations than others. But in general, we examine the same DNA variations for everyone. It depends on the DNA report that you will buy.
Very good, thank you. The other question is about the ancestry report. I see people asking, I got my reports, but I don't see the ancestry report. And I can answer that. It's that the ancestry report was a request that came at the end, just before we launched the report, and we added because we had big demand for that. And so we're working to finalize the formatting of the report, and everything will be ready within a month. So within a month, people will get their ancestry report. Now, my next question is on the regional meal plan. You know, Fotini, I would like you to explain, you know, what is the difference in the meal plan that we offer?
Yeah, of course, my pleasure. Okay, the difference is that we try to target two basic groups with regards to the regional markets. One is the Western type, and the other one is the Asian type of plants, so that we can service as much possible for our launch the two major, let's say, food diets, plant diets for everyone. Also, and very importantly, we also include and you have answered the question when we are actually selecting your type of plan. We actually have preferences, whether you follow a vegetarian diet, ovo-lacto vegetarian, vegan, or the just conventional. And this applies to both types of Asian or Western type of plans. As we move on, and as we said before, we keep developing our services. We want to be the best, and we're actually going to include, as we move on, more and more regional type of diets, because I can understand, and everyone in MaVie can understand, that offering a personalized service needs to serve, you know, everyone's preference.
Thank you. For the exercise training plan, where can we see which genes are affected the recommendations? What are the variables that determine what is recommended? Is it based on just gene, age, or other things?
Okay, this is a good one. So just keep in mind, always when you're looking at your plans, at your services, everything, that, as I said during my brief presentation about the DNA and the service we offer, we try, despite we cannot, you know, see each other, we try to get as much possible information from a person as is possible to be done. So what we do is we take your DNA report assessment, we combine it with your lifestyle assessment, your everything that you answered in our questionnaire, and with algorithms and the logics that we have in our system, then the plan is created for you. So when we do provide you with a customized service or a product, we're actually taking into account both factors: genetic background and environment, your rates, your goal, even because you select, for example, for the training plan, whether you're going to do elastic bands or weightlifting. So I think we answered quite clear this question, Daniel.
Thank you. Same with the dietary plan. If 10 people choose a type of diet like ovo-lacto vegetarian, and they all weigh the same age, will the diet recommendation be the same? Again, which genes are influencing the dietary suggestions?
Again, the same answer, more or less. When we are when you're actually buying the package, you're buying combination of the DNA report and the plan. So the genes that are investigated and are affecting your plan, you can see them in the healthy diet and weight management report. And the genes that have been investigated in order to assess your training plan can be found in the fitness DNA report. Again, we take into account all the parameters that you answered in your questionnaire. As for whether 10 people have exactly the same parameters, meaning the conclusions for each category are exactly the same, and also the age group, the type of diet that they prefer, their BMI, everything that they answer is the same, yes, the group of these people will get more or less the same plan.
Thank you. Another question on something else now. One of our participants on the call says that, okay, now I got the report, my health report, and where can I see a summary of which supplements I need?
Okay, for the supplements, since we have not yet launched them, unfortunately, we cannot be at the position to provide you with information of the supplements, ingredients, or any other formula information, since it's not yet launched. We are launching them in New Year, so by then you definitely have more information.
Fotini, if I read my report today, and can I know if I should buy a vitamin D or calcium? Is there a way that give me some guideline to? I know that our supplement are not ready yet, but is there any guideline that I can get from the report to help me to better take supplements?
I would not advise to do so, because even if you see, I will say the same thing again and again. This kind of service is based both on the DNA report assessment and the environmental assessment, meaning all the questionnaires. So now you can see the assessment of the DNA report, but the assessment that is the overall assessment that will lead to the actual recommendations for a specific vitamin supplement, for example, comes from the algorithm that takes into account both factors, environment and genetic background. So for now, I wouldn't advise, because what you see in the DNA reports, it's not necessarily what is actually happening. To give you an example, for example, in my report, it seems that my genes are not favoring me for having a good vitamin D level. This does not mean that if I actually go and do a blood test, my vitamin D will be low, because my vitamin D may be actually good based on the fact that I spent like 30 minutes out in the sun, which is the most important factor to have when it comes to environment, to have a good vitamin level. So until we have the supplements launched and everything in the logics are there and on display to the clients, I wouldn't advise just with the DNA report to go and buy vitamins or so.
Okay, thank you. I have another one here is, where is it? My husband has eczema, but in his report, it shows his skin type is normal.
I understand. Okay, this is a good question, and I would actually answer it in a more general way, and perhaps this way can give more answers to other members too. As we said, our DNA reports and assessments are not associated with medical conditions. And to tell you a personal story, I do also spend a period having eczema too. And this actually categorized in medical conditions. So whatever you see in your beauty DNA report, and that's actually why we use the term beauty, it has to do more on the wellness, on the lifestyle aspect of DNA assessment, cannot help you to give interpretation for medical conditions. What we do investigate in beauty DNA report has more to do with aging process, antioxidation in terms of skin cells renewal, skin replenishment, all the things that are most closely related to beauty and youthfulness, and not on the eczema side. Yeah.
One of the question is, when did you say that the supplement will be launched? I can answer that question. It will vary by market, because some markets are highly regulated on supplements, and we will inform you. It's going to be in the next year, okay? It's going to be in 2019, and but it will go market by market after we have all the everything, you know, all the license, and not the license, but all the permits to start selling in the different markets. So we have to register. It's really register the product in each market, and after it's registered, we will open the market. So some market will be faster than others. That's the answer. Now I have here someone said that I'm a gluten intolerant, and in the DNA report supported this. However, I have many food recommendation with bread and wheat, so wondering why I have this in my recommendation and it's not reflective on my profile.
Yeah, that's a good one. So it's good to explain something here. And I think, or not, I think, I'm sure somewhere in the terms and conditions it's always stated, and in the website and the FAQs, when we're talking about gluten tolerance, this is something different from celiac disease, just to clarify that, because gluten intolerance is just that when you're consuming products that contain gluten may cause you some uncomfortable symptoms. So for the case of our dear member that stated this question, there is no way to take into account everyone's profile about their entire medical or physical history. And this is also the reason why when you're filling in your questions, and we are using them in our assessments to provide you with the plans, we never ask you whether, for example, you have specific allergies or you have, like now, gluten intolerance. So what happens is that when you read the plan, you are advised to replace the ingredients that you are aware that cause you the medical symptoms that you are aware of. So for example, if I have in my plan a recipe that contains nuts and I'm allergic to nuts, I will definitely replace it with another food that does not, cause me allergic symptoms. It's just a recommended plan, a more generalized plan.
Thank you. One more question here. How is the diet plan being used to prevent the unfavorable genes?
Okay, something to clear here. We're not changing our genes. We're not changing our DNA variation. There is no way, unfortunately, till today to do that. What we're doing, we're trying to amend the environmental factors like our diet to enhance the biological function that is both affected by genes and environment, to have a better biological functions for specific traits or for overall fitness or weight management. So for the plants, we take into consideration the macro and micro nutrients requirements like protein, fat, and carbs as alone, as individual substances, and we also take them into account in the specific foods that are recommended and the recipes. If you click on each recipe, you're also going to see the distribution of feeds of protein, fat, carbs in a specific recipe. This means that, again, the algorithm has calculated the total amount that is recommended for you to be split in specific foods. The genes that, again, the same answer, the genes that have been taken into account to create this dietary plan are the genes that are included in the relative report. For this case, it's the healthy diet and weight management report.
Thank you, Fatini. This is all the time we have now. I know many people are asking questions. We will get back to you with that. It's all the time we have for today. So thank you everyone for your participation.
Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you, everyone.